everyone, and welcome to Sunday Night Dead. Matthew Sozer from Automoon Paranormal in beautiful Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Thank you all for joining us tonight as we take a dive into demonology for our topic tonight. Hello, Stefan. Happy to have you on with us tonight. Again, this is the live Sunday Night Dead show. If you are on with us Sunday night at 9 o'clock Eastern. Hello, Shine. So, just a little bit about maybe if you're new, kind of the whole thought behind these shows is really kind of hitting different things, either experiments and investigations I've done or some live investigations, or then it's really kind of topics and things that I find interesting. And so this one I find interesting. Hey Barb. And really what drove my interest in this is if anyone has seen the movie, hello, Christine. If anyone's seen the movie Hereditary, and kind of the demon that's the antagonist in that movie, that kind of was like, wow, I never heard of that one. And so I did a little digging, and that led me to like the Lesser Key of Solomon and all these different hierarchies of demons in the world of demonology. And then actually that one in particular, Pyman, has come through when we've done Thousand Box experiments, which I think is kind of odd. Usually you have I think it's like troll. I honestly think it's like spirits trolling. You usually get like things coming through just saying like, Satan, things like that, which I think is just really done to try to freak you out. So it's weird when we get some obscure ones that come through, which actually do have a list of some really weird names that have come through that I assume are in that space that I've never found in any research. One of them being what sounds like Dimlet. I was that's actually a private home investigation where some really weird stuff was coming through, and something was coming through, and that seemed to be the name it was giving itself. So again, could be just a made up name as well. But anyway, this got me kind of digging into this. And so there's really kind of this hierarchy, just like there's an angels hierarchy, because again, these are, at least by tradition, fallen angels. So, you have kings, dukes, princes, marquises, earls, knights, presidents. And actually kings, which is that first layer, at least when you get into kind of this like Dictionary Infernal and Lesser Key of Solomon things, a lot of them are names you wouldn't find very familiar. There's some, if you do searches on like the Princes of Hell, there's a monk that did, hang on. We get these like bots coming in here like doing stuff. So I apologize. We'll just keep doing it. And if you're seeing this later, I apologize. Which I'm going to also add, I did say I would kind of like tighten up the show, and we'll do the chats. I'm not going to tie the chats on the back end. If anyone came back to see, I had a hell of a time cutting the show down, and it ended up having like two versions of the show out there on the channel. It got really, really weird. So the after show, which I'll talk about near the end of this one, we'll have to still do as like a separate show, which for folks that are new, the after show is really just kind of this open-ended chat we do, which is kind of a cool, fun thing we do. Just whatever folks want to talk about, we do that. But anyway, there's I believe it was a monk that did a 7 Princes of Hell, and he lined them all up with like the 7 deadly sins. And I'll say, I think there's only one that overlaps with this list. What I found interesting on this one was a lot of these are ones I was not familiar with before until I started researching. There's a couple that I've heard of, but most of them were things that I haven't heard of before. So I thought, I'll do a little bit of a deep dive on this and get into it. Now, I want to share a interesting coincidence. All in the span of an hour last night. So I'm still kind of torn on what I'm going to do about this. In the span of an hour last night, I had one person that's a good friend of the show, regular on the show, post that said they would not watch it because they felt naming these things was bad luck or, a bad thing to do. I had someone else message me to not name these names because they felt it was a bad thing to do. And then when I was doing my research, I pulled up a website that had a big warning box right on the front saying, do not name these names. So if you see me actually use banners to refer to them and not name them very much, that's why I'm, I guess, a little superstitious on this. But yeah, we're gonna dive into this. Now, I will say also, when I was doing my research, it is really creepy. You do a lot of these names and you will find videos of how to channel these demons, how to work with these demons, chants and incantations and sigils to channel their energy. I have some colleagues that I know kind of are in a different space that are more inclined to dabble in this area than I am. I see red flags all over this place. So I'm just going to turn around and say, if you do research or dig into this and see these videos, I would stay away from that stuff. I would stay light years away from that stuff. I would not be dabbling with this. This is how I view it. If there's anything to them, and again, why do people typically want to conjure these? And we'll get into this. They typically have some kind of power or something that they can bestow, but there's always something they ask for in return. So in the best case situation, you are talking about some entity that is a capitalist that wants to wheel and deal and negotiate with you on terms and in an area that you don't have all the information. And if you think about this in anything in the business world, if you are entering into any kind of business arrangement and you're the one on the informational disadvantage, that always ends up not working out in your favor. So that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is, some of these stories out there are true and that these are entities that have a deep hatred of humanity and want to destroy people. And so these interactions can only bring bad things to you in the long run. So I would stay way away from these, channel the energy of Demon X or whatever. Again, I'm not going to name all these, all the Steph's asking, are these guys are legit making, I honestly didn't, I didn't read I didn't play the videos. It didn't scare me. I just, I'm okay doing a show on this. I'm okay on naming these. There are lines that I do draw. I think I've shared with a lot of you guys. I haven't really done a lot of the audio here yet. We'll do some shows on that in the future. But, I get a lot of hatred. I go into investigations. I could put out a digital recorder and I will get voices and stuff saying, Matthew Slozer, we hate you, die, all this like creepy horror movie type stuff. So I know there's things out there that don't like me. It's a reasonable chance that they fall within kind of this camp. I'm not saying it's definite, but there's a chance. So I'm not going to dive in and play any videos that allege to channel their energy or potentially conjure them. So I didn't look into it. It just, I'd be really disturbed if I was some middle school kid is seeing this stuff and doing meditations to channel the energy of some of these folks that we're going to talk about. Christine has in there. It's between, the person that does it and the, I'd say the entity that, on what that agreement is. And obviously I don't mean to be offensive to anyone on here. There are people that those people that do those videos, that this is a space and an element they work in, and this is their piece on it. I'm just saying, not something I would play around with. Know what you're doing if you're going to go down that path. As I said, best case scenario, in my view, this is a kind of capitalist arrangement where you're the one coming into it with less info than the person you're bargaining with. And I think that's a bad deal. So that's me. So, so I'm just kind of commenting on here. Oh, God. Yeah, so we somehow got on radar again for these bots. So we have these, and it's so funny because they're in some language. I don't even know what language it is, putting all these things in here. So anyway, so let's get into this. So I'm ranking these not in the order they appear in the kind of in the key. I rank them by, and this is an assumption on my part, they have legions that they are in charge of. And so I'm kind of going on the assumption that seemed to fit for most of them, that the number of legions that they were in charge of is a relative indication of kind of how much power or authority they have. So we're going low to high with, there's two weird ones in here that I could be a little off on. So again, could be, this is just some assumptions on my part, but I am going to do these from The 9 kings of hell, from what appears to be the lowest in rank to the highest. So with that, and then I might name them once, but I'm going to keep I usually don't do banners on this, but I'm going to do banners. So number 1 is person. Said just like a human person. So they appear as, I did have some pictures originally up, and they didn't come through very well. So I'm going to see if I can get some. See if I can share here. This is from the Dictionary Infernal. I'll pull this up quick. So this is the depiction of person. So a lion head, a man's body, and riding a bear. And they come through. Jackie, I said I was maybe only going to say it once. Maybe I won't say it at all. I don't know. I'm kind of winging it. Maybe I just got tempted into doing it. Who knows? But anyway, proceeds by trumpets, rides a bear, man with a lion's head. Some interesting things on him. Now, some of these we're going to have a lot more information than others. Like I said, some of these are kind of obscure. And I will say one that has the one that has almost the least amount of information on it seems to be one of the nastiest, which actually kind of I find a little disturbing, because I'm wondering is this one like so nasty that everybody stays away from it, and there isn't a whole lot of information out on this one because it's so bad. But we'll get to that one. Trumpets proceed. This one's appearance. That you'll see that's kind of a common theme. A lot of these have either you hear music or they have a little band of musicians that like go in front of them. There's also interesting part on this is he has a snake that he uses as a whip, I guess, to kind of like whip the bear or whip people. And they say he's got ties to the Egyptian god Horus. Now, I found that interesting because, most of the images I see of Horus, and I'm not, I know there's probably people that follow the show, people kind of in this whole kind of paranormal area that are much more into Egyptology than I am. This is not an area that I have a lot of research or knowledge in. But if I remember right, the ones I usually see of Horus seems to have a hawk head and a human body. So I found it funny or interesting that that is not in any of the descriptions. A lot of these, when you see the descriptions of them, there'll be like multiple descriptions of how they are appear or how they're described. That was not the case on this one. So I found that interesting. They also say that there's a tie to the Sphinx. So kind of the lion head, man body, and then in Egypt, the lion body and man head, which is another interesting thing you'll find with a lot of these demonic type entities. A lot of times the appearance and things are these kind of human animal mixtures, kind of what you would typically see with kind of like the Egyptian gods and things, like a man body with a different animal head. So he will also, like the Sphinx, do questions and tests. So, part of the thing is in these keys and some of these grimoires, there's rituals for conjuring these demons to have them do some type of, excuse me, I'm getting ready to sneeze. Sorry about that. Getting ready to, have this discussion or wheel and deal to get this, benefit, this agreement, whatever is going on there. And so a lot of times there will be tests. If the conjurer is not skilled or ready enough, it can end up very badly for them. Some of these, there's actually some descriptions as to kind of things that need to get done, or else they'll get in trouble really, really fast. So in this case, so there's a lot of these will do different tests. And so much like the Sphinx, this entity will ask questions of the person. But the specific skill or benefit that this one provides is locating treasure. So that is supposedly, if you ask, like, why would somebody even want to do this, or try to engage with this entity, from what I found, that was the main driver here, is knowledge of lost and hidden treasures. So wanting to you want to find buried gold, somebody would go and like conjure this one and try to find the treasure. That was the biggest thing here. I'm just going to get caught up here on. All right. Hello, Eli or Ellie. I'm sorry. I think it's Ellie. All righty here. Oh, that's interesting. Human and animal representation are narcissistic in nature. Well, it's interesting. Elaborate on that if you could, because I could kind of see that from multiple angles. I almost see it as, now this is some of my bias is going to come in here. So again, just realize that this is World According to Matt. And so kind of my view of how these things all operate. And maybe on the chat at the end, I'll get a little more into kind of some of my models on how I think this whole thing works. But there tends to be also this idea of a lot of these entities want to be revered as gods or godlike. And so I think some of the appearing that way is a way to kind of instill. If they just appear like a person or like a bigger person, that isn't as much as, if I appear, a bullhead and a human body and I breathe fire or something like that. It's I think that's part of it. And I think there's also a little bit of an intimidation. No, I was right the first time. Thank you. I think we had that conversation before. I just, old brain, I forget. All right, let's go to the next one. Some of these, they tend, I will say in general, I have more information the farther we go down, but that isn't always the case. There's a couple here that, all right. So the next one, so I'll probably say them once, is Zagan or Zagan. No picture on this guy. Appears at, so he has 33 legions. So the first one had 22. Just again, if we're using that as kind of a benchmark here, this one has 33. Appears as a bull with griffin wings. And not a whole lot on this entity other than some of the benefits. Really, that's about all I could find on this one. There's not as much on him. He makes fools wise, so that's one piece. It's interesting that and that's the way it was worded in a lot of cases. So it's not he bestows intelligence, which is interesting because there's other ones where it's phrased more like that. Brings knowledge, bestows. This is makes fools wise. So I don't know if that means only the foolish would engage with him, or if it truly is only bestowing wisdom onto foolish people. I don't know. I just find it interesting, the wording on that one, because it is different than similar benefits that are described for some of these other entities. The other thing, and this is, I could see this as to why some folks may be interested in this, is he has the ability to turn metal into coins of that metal. So if you had a slab of copper, he could turn it into copper coins. If he got a slab of gold, you could turn it into gold coins. It's funny. Stefan just asked if this guy has a paranormal show. That's the first thing I thought of too. It's like the mix of the guy that's known for having William Shatner reactions to ghosts. Although I think he's, for all the negatives you might want to say, he actually drew a lot of interest to the field as well. So I wish him well. I'm not throwing any shade his way there, but I did think the same thing. Anyway, yeah, Christine, I will add that I kind of come from the Abrahamic side here, so I am not I will have a little bit of a view on that from kind of that angle, full disclosure here too. So and that's why I know there's people that actually feel it's cool to engage and do things with them. Obviously I'm from the background where like they're negative. So so just full disclosure on there, but everybody make your own decisions. All right. Steph's beating me to it. No, I said I might say them one. Maybe, okay, I won't say the names of the other ones. That was the other piece. So that was the third one, is actually the whole combination of water, wine, blood, oil. I've seen kind of all those four combinations you could think of So it turns water to wine, wine to water, water to oil, oil to blood, blood to wine, wine to blood. So yeah, it's those kind of things as well. So yeah, I see it the same way, Steph. But again, it's the filter you view this through. I view it as kind of like an invitation on that. I was going to wait till the end, but I'll go ahead and share a little bit of my view. I wonder what the red flag was. Jackie, elaborate on what you think the red flag was on that. So I've shared before that I think, from my chemistry background and stuff, and then as I've learned a little bit about like programming, it's clear to me that this is a program system that we live in. I believe it's crazy to think that these things fell into place by accidental events. So I do believe there's a program. I do believe there's a programmer. I believe by model, I don't think this is actually how it works, but again, using it as a model, like I've talked before when we do the astrology things, that, these positions and geometries kind of just give you an indication of energies and things that are going on. They're not the cause, but it's kind of like a way to kind of see how energies and things are sizing up. I view these types of entities as kind of like artificial intelligence. So these are, much like us with free will, these are things that kind of had their own, kind of doing their own thing going on. If you see a lot of what, like Book of Enoch and different things like this, a lot of what they do is bestow information, much like what we're talking about here, like the quote unquote benefits that happen on it. It just so happens that it can be things like, you teach the 3-year-old that, if you throw that rock through the window, it makes a really cool noise. It's that, some of it, when you look at some of the descriptions and things, is it for good? Is it for bad? Is it kind of like a trolling thing just for entertainment? Who knows? And again, that all depends on your individual perspective here. But I do find that one interesting, that there is kind of like a mirror there. So anyway, more and more people are saying that, man, about the pro. Yeah, it's funny. I'm seeing a lot more people on this whole like programming and so yeah. So I'll even take it a little farther. That I think, again, I'm biased by my own religious view of things, but I almost feel like we're like a program running in safe mode now. That things are too far off the rails. That it's running in a certain mode that sorting out kind of what's corrupted versus what's not corrupted. And yeah. So anyway. Different topic for a different time. That's all I have on that one. So I'm not going to say this next one, and I will say in advance, there's not much on this one, but this is the one that I said had the comments of it being the worst. What was it? I'm giving very deadly and the worst of them all. So I'm not even going to mention the name. So I won't name this one. 36 legions. So we're still in the bottom. There's 9 of them. So we're still in the bottom third. But there's not a lot on this guy. He appears as a lion riding a black horse. Just comments of very deadly. There's not much on him. Very deadly, very dangerous. Teaches trickery. Where I think this might be very deadly and dangerous is, at least, a lot of the traditions on these is, if you talk about, possession or anything like those, that it requires permission. The other thing noted for this one was can take people's souls without permission. So I don't know if that's why this one's considered particularly dangerous or not, but I found it very interesting. Out of the 9, there's the least on this one, and what's on it is almost all kind of like warnings and nasty stuff. So just found that very interesting. There's at least a description. Lion with a riding a black horse. So that was a quick one. So yeah, and there may be a little. I did not want to just read the whole. Trying to blank on like the Lesser Key of Solomon description and things, but and I pulled up a bunch of other stuff for these, and so there may be a little more on him, but it wasn't much. Oh, I did forget a big one. Knocks down walls and can build or knock down walls and towers. So I guess that could be another one that, if you go back into like siege times and things, this may have been someone that was invoked to help knock down like city walls and things like that. I forgot about that. All right. Moving ahead, getting into some of these are getting kind of interesting now. So if you are of a Abrahamic background, you may recognize this name at least from the Old Testament, but it's not the same guy. Now, I always find the funny story of him, this magician in the Bible is there's a story in the Old Testament where he gets into a argument because there's an angel in the road that's going to kill him if he keeps going down this path. And so the donkey stops. I think it was the donkey stops moving. And this guy with the same name is going nuts and hitting the donkey. And, why aren't you going? And then the donkey like rolls around and starts like talking to him saying, why are you beating me? I'm trying to protect you. And then the guy's like starting to like yell at the donkey and actually is like in the Old Testament, like arguing with the donkey, to which I think back to like Shrek, the donkey can fly, the donkey can talk. It's like the guy seems to have no reaction to the fact that the animal like turns around and starts having a conversation and an argument with him. He just keeps arguing with it, which again, just found funny. Anyway, there's two coming up here that have a very similar description, which I find very interesting. So this one, 40 legions. So again, we're kind of in the same ballpark size-wise on what they're commanding. A head of a bull, a head of a man, a head of a ram. So kind of a three-headed thing. Riding a bear and holding a hawk. So a lot of stuff going on there with this one. Associated with greed, idolatry, immorality. Has a lot of different things that he can bestow. Gives correct info. Can see the future. So kind of divination space, but also a lot of them have that piece as well, which I think is possibly why some of the divination things, which full disclosure, I got my cards here and stuff, can be given a bad name. I don't feel I'm invoking these dudes when I'm doing that, but some other people might feel differently. Invisibility, the ability to see into other dimensions, which I find very interesting. And then another piece on this one, which I found interesting as well, was there's a little detail given on the specific ask. And so allegedly, this entity would ask for years off of your life in exchange for these services. So, which I find interesting. I find Sarah, who I do the Tuesday show with, we were talking about it actually was on the show. We were talking the other day about that Twilight Zone one where the guy shows up and here's a case of $1 million, and I'll give you the $1 million. All I have to do is hit this button, and a person you don't know will die. And what the people don't know is the person that dies is the last person he visited. So everyone that's getting the $1 million, the next person, so they're getting the $1 million and they're dropping dead. Kind of thing. So I always think of that too, as like, are the years that you're giving up off your life going to run right up to the point that you can't use any of these benefits that you supposedly negotiated? So, Jackie's look at the world card about the animals there. Well, mine is that could be past, present, future. There's a number on here that you're going to see 3-headed, but Jackie, my deck here, the one I always use is my steampunk deck. I have a bunch of decks, but that's my go-to one. So it's not the traditional. So I have to even think off the top of my head what the world card looks like on the traditional one. So my world card does not have any animals on it at all. It's more this kind of almost Princess Jasmine looking figure. So I'll have to go back and look at that. Steph, yeah, I'll have to look. That might be what the 3 heads symbolize. That would certainly make sense, particularly with the divination type angle. That this one in particular seems to be given a lot of that. And then it's interesting that the magician in the Old Testament that has the same name had a lot of things with that too. It was a lot of like oracles, a lot of it was also like paid to like pronounce curses on people, which I don't see on that, but there is some divination things on that as well. So that could very well be. Again, just getting caught up on chat here. Dolly's asking, he's actually riding a black horse, not a arse body, right? Well, no. This entity, I'm not sure which one you were asking, Dolly. This entity supposedly rides a bear. It's the second one on our list that is described as riding a bear. And I'll add too, some of these have like multiple descriptions. I'm sure they can show themselves in different ways. So again, consider this kind of like a Cliff Notes distillation of different informations on there. Yes, that's part of the reason. I mean, there are, you can get into different levels of, in my view, kind of crazy as to where you draw the lines on this, but that is part of the, that's what some people will claim, is if you go into any type of those kind of spaces that you're interacting with these kind of entities. That's what some people think. All right. Okay, Jackie said that she was confused on the world card. So, all right, we're going to go to the next one, which this one can get confusing. So bear with me on it, and I'll explain why. So if you go to the key of Solomon and things. Oh, I got a good question. I'm going to share that if you don't mind. Yeah, I believe there's bits of truth to it. What I think on all these things, and this is why I get upset when people get into too big of arguments over things, is I think all these things, I always go back to that, like, I forget if it's 4 blind men or 5 blind men and the elephant. That fable of, they're all describing an elephant and arguing, but they're all feeling like different parts of it. So I feel all these things are models and descriptions to try to describe a reality that is broader than our finite beings are able to fully comprehend. So we have to build these models to help describe it. And I might describe it a different way as you. In all reality, probably nobody has it described, 100% or even 95% of the way there, but they're all models. And so let me know if this answers your question or not. So I feel, yes, there's bits of truth to this. I don't think this is all made up stuff, but I do not believe that what we're writing here is, kind of fundamentalist to the word accurate. I think these are descriptions of models of, I do believe these entities exist. I do believe they are, not human spirits. I personally believe it's a dimensional type thing, that they reside in a dimension that interacts with ours, but is not within ours. So, and that these interactions can really happen. And honestly, if I had to guess, and I'm not convinced on this, but if I had to guess, I'm not in the camp of, I know I'm probably gonna get hatred for this. I'm not in the camp necessarily of thoroughly evil want to destroy, as much as I don't think they necessarily care, if that makes sense. I think at the end of the day, they don't really give a shit if good things happen to us or bad things happen to us. They're just going to do their thing. And so much like some of that Enoch thing, if, honestly, I feel like that the one that, I think if I remember that story right, the one demon kind of shows how they can, like, oh, that metal, you can turn that into a sword, and that sword can chop somebody's head off. And so, and then all these I think I almost take that as, hey, watch this, guys. This will be really funny to watch them all like it's that kind of thing. It's this, they just don't care. I think it's I don't know if it's as much malice as apathy. And if bad things happen and they find it entertaining, so be it. But again, that's world according to Matt. All right, so Ruth Ann John Bear coming from the north. That could, some of these have directions associated with them, but some of them don't. So it gets a little weird. That's why I kind of stayed away from things that I thought could get a little confusing because it's inconsistent. But there were directions given to some of these. So where this one gets a little confusing is there is the description in the Lesser Key of Solomon. There is a God in the Old Testament that there's this ongoing kind of idolatry battle between the Israelites and people that lived in Canaan ahead of time that is described as a different entity. And then there is reference in the New Testament, I think in some other areas, Beelzebub. All three are described differently, but the names overlap enough. So this is where I said this one can get a little confusing. So I'm going to start with just the one with this name. So I'm going to go ahead and share again. So head of a cat, head of a person, head of a toad can also appear as a cat, person, or toad. And then in the picture, even though there's no description of this kind of spider body and spider legs, somebody added that, and that's in a lot of pictures as well. So I don't know whether it is or not, but spiders, I'm not a fan of spiders, so that would freak me out on its own. The name is spelled differently, Steph, but this is another one of those things. It's almost like if anybody's read kind of like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, we're going to get kind of like confusing where there's like a character that goes by like 4 names depending on where they're at. Some of these have like 4 or 5 spellings on their names. So that could be part of it as well. So there's not a whole lot on this cat, toad, man version. Christine's got, and so that's where it gets into. So if you start looking into some of this, they will say, could also be this, could also be that, might be this, might be that. So kind of what I'm going to start with, and hopefully this makes sense to everybody, is I am going to start with this entity as is. And then I will extend and describe, kind of branch it out to others that have this overlapping name that may be related, maybe not. I'm going to go on the assumption that they are not related and that it's just similar names. Just like my name, Matt, there's, it was a very popular name when I was born. There's tons of them out there. Not the same person. So could be the same thing here. So there's not a whole lot on this specific entity as is. 66 legions. So we're getting up there in number. This is 3 times the number of our first one. And we're about halfway through. We're on number 5 here. Again, cat, toad, man can appear as any of them. I forget if there's any indication that he can appear as combinations, but I wouldn't be surprised since that seems to be a pretty common thing. So again, could be toad head, man body, that kind of thing. Again, don't know where the spider legs originally came from, but that does kind of freak me out. Trickery and teaching invisibility are some of his traits or things that he can bestow upon someone conjuring him. So, and again, I always think with the invisibility thing, I always still kind of think on that influence, probably not ones at these high of a rank doing this, but I do kind of think there is something to those old little cartoons where you have like a little angel and devil like on your shoulder and things. I do believe that just the fact that, putting these recorders out and recording voices and things, I do wonder, what's out there and around us potentially giving us little nudges on things. So, it could be Steph, transformation. And I honestly think probably all of these can manifest and show themselves as very different things. So, I mean, just take this as the way that they are described in this book. I think, they could probably shapeshift into lots of different stuff. It's probably kind of like the way they prefer to be shown or prefer to be seen, if that makes sense. Now, that same name in kind of the biblical version, which it doesn't seem to be the same. That's why I do think these are just similar names, and they're going is described as kind of a bull with a human's body. And really kind of what happened there, if you're going to, I'm trying to take more of a neutral and not give the kind of what the theological description would be. That was a lot of people back then would associate deities with land. They didn't necessarily move with the people. They had, the gods had their different territories that they would be over. And so the fertility or the, agriculture god in that area that was worshipped in that area was the entity with the same name. And so when the Old Testament, when they moved into this area, it would be like, this, it was very fertile area. And it's like, well, this is where we pray to get our good harvests. And so some of the people there would start, well, we need good harvests. Maybe we should, pray to this God too. And then that's this whole kind of undercurrent in the Old Testament of kind of worshiping this entity versus their God, and kind of this back and forth. Again, I think it's just similarities in the name. I don't believe it is the same thing. Okay. Christine's got a little more elaboration. Thank you for that, because I'm not knowledgeable in this. She's like, not in the zap, no one sees you, just diverts away from the person that conjured the entity. So when they wish to not be seen. So that's kind of cool that it's just, so it's not like, Harry Potter invisibility cloak. It's just, hey, look there. And people look the other way, I guess is kind of how I would describe it then, that it's just, people don't pay attention to you. Kind of like when people say, I feel invisible. That's the way I would describe, at least the way Christine's describing it. And thank you for that, Christine. That's the way I would understand it almost. And then finally, I think this is a bigger stretch to go to the Beelzebub one. And again, if you go to that, and I can't think of the guy's name, I think it was a monk that did this whole tie of, princes to hell, the seven deadly sins. That's a very, very different list. It doesn't seem to really, in my opinion, doesn't seem to really tie back to anything else, which is why I didn't want to do it. But that's kind of where I think people try to link these two together. But I don't see it. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that piece of it, and really didn't do a deep dive into a description of that entity, because I don't feel they are the same at all. That is just my view. You can disagree. Just trying to do the best I can to go over these. So next one is, in my opinion, an interesting one. And this is going to lead to another show we're going to do, because there is a whole story out there of Solomon. And some of you may not know this, but it's a writing where he is given this silver ring. I believe it's from Michael, Archangel Michael. And that lets him command demons. And he uses demons to help him build the temple. And so there's all these stories of these different demons he interacts with. A very, very interesting one with these. And I definitely will do a deeper dive on this one, because it's a really interesting story. It didn't fit this theme, and I didn't want this to go too long, so I'm not including it in this. But the Seven Sisters, and I found that probably even more intriguing than this one, but I was already on this topic, so we're going to bring this in later. But there's this whole dialogue between Solomon and a whole bunch of different demons using this conjuring ring. And there's a interesting story with the next one. And this is one of the few that's a name that I have heard a lot of before. And that is that guy. So 72 legions. So again, we're kind of in the same. It's almost like we made this jump from the first four to now this next level, where they're all in this kind of hovering in the 70, 80 range. I have a lot on this one, and I do believe there's a picture. So let me pull up the picture and share quick. So another three-headed guy, very similar three heads to one you've already known: bull, ram, and person. supposedly breathes fire, which I think that might be what that is showing there. And instead of a bear, rides a, I've seen this said differently. I've heard rides a dragon, could have a dragon's body. I've heard had a more human body. Again, it kind of is, you get different descriptions depending on who you're talking. It has a serpent's tail. I've read one account where he refers to himself as the son of the dragon. This may come from the Solomon story where he had this ring that allowed him to kind of subdue demons. So that might be where this characteristic comes from. So I gotta qualify this. But I did find comments that, unlike some of these other ones, he will tend to back down and get kind of cowardly when confronted, which I found very interesting. Now, there's decent amount of stories. So there's the Solomon story, and then there is also, so my background is Catholic, and so, not every Christian would have this in their Bible, but we have a book called Tobit, and there's a whole bunch about Asmodeus in the book of Tobit, and so this kind of hatchet, it's kind of an interesting story. So there was a kind of giving you Cliff Notes version here, but there is a guy or a woman, Sarah, who I believe she was married 7 times, and on her wedding night, the husband would get murdered because Asmodeus, I said the name, was attached to Sarah and would not let basically anybody have her. And I've heard different versions of this. They put a sympathetic spin on it that, these weren't good guys and he actually cared for this person. I've heard another one that, he just, very jealous and possessive, and so would kill any human that would want to get close. So, it could, Pepper is asking if these are more descriptions. It could be. I mean, and they're described different ways. So, I mean, who knows? Just, I take it for the interesting thing that it is, and don't take it as, absolute fact that this, entity is running around in some parallel dimension looking exactly like that picture looked. Anyway, so there's this story. I forget the guy's name, but he ends up with, he falls in love with her. The Archangel Raphael says he will help him. What he has to do is catch this fish that this entity doesn't like fish. And so before they consummate the marriage, he's supposed to take the liver, and I think it's the heart of the fish, and put it on the fire, and that smell will drive the demon away. And then when the demon runs away, the archangel will take care of him. And so that's ultimately what happens here. There's some other things in the Solomon story too, where he seems to really attach to young women and prevent marriages from happening. So basically killing the, I think in most of the cases, at least the claim is that he kills the male before they're able to be together. There's different quotes in the Solomon story about him, destroying the wedding bed, separating couples before the wedding bed, those kind of things. The Solomon story, it's interesting because Solomon trolls him. So he says he hates water and he hates fish. And so Solomon has him treading clay to build the temple, and has him do it with a giant platform of jugs full of water on his back. So Solomon goes out of his way to get this entity to have to deal with water and deal with fish, and just it's weird because it's clear that compared to his interactions with some of the other ones, Solomon seems to be a little more afraid and respectful of this one, but then almost to it, it's he tends to be harsher because of that. But basically, another interesting thing that happens is he gets tricked into basically asking to see this entity's power. And so he takes off the ring, hides the ring, does something, and there were wings in that picture. He blows his wings and supposedly shoots Solomon 400 miles away. So now while Solomon's 400 miles away, this entity takes the form of him and basically starts having, if you know the story of Solomon, Solomon had a problem with women. He had a very, very large number of wives, and then on top of that, a very, very large number of concubines on top of it. So this entity takes his form and basically starts having sex with all of his wives, his concubines, and then even this would be really gross. It doesn't specify what form. I'm going to assume he was not in the form of Solomon, but he then starts also, just to really kind of put it to Solomon, has sex with Solomon's mom, Bathsheba. So he's doing all this. Solomon eventually gets back with the ring, and gets this whole thing back under control. But that's some of the stories here. So there's a lot kind of in this Jewish literature, both this story about Solomon, and then in the book of Tobit about this one entity, much more than you hear from any of the other ones, particularly since I think the one I think just shares the name of that magician in the Old Testament, and then the other one that shares the same name of the god in Canaan. I don't think, I don't think those are the same entities. I think they just have very similar names. So this is the only one I believe that is in kind of that old biblical literature, which again, I found interesting. So getting to one that I find really interesting. So now we're on number 7. So we're in the big 3, so to speak. In some respects, I find this entity the most interesting. And let me check and see if there is a picture. And if there is, I'm going to wait before I show it, because when I hear the description and show you the picture, I don't think there's a picture on this one that I have up. Shoot. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So 85 legions. The biggest thing that comes up with this one is when they appear very fierce and try very hard to intimidate the person that is conjuring them. And if they are intimidated, or if they do falter, it just says very bad things could happen. Either he's going to go away, never to return, or could do bad things to the person. So why I wanted to share the picture is when you hear about all this fearsomeness, different descriptions, a knight on a pale horse, but then also this kind of person with a cat's head, not a lion's head, not a tiger, like a domestic cat's head. And the picture that I found, it reminds me of Puss in Boots from Shrek. So it just, and again, I don't mean anything, disrespectful on this. It's the artist, not the entity, but it was interesting to read all these descriptions about how the fearsome appearance and attack. And then when you see the picture, you see this like Puss in Boots looking character. So it was a very interesting combination. Again, like a lot of the other ones, gets preceded by a lot of noise, a lot of a band playing lots of instruments and things. The other weird one that I read, which is really interesting, it can switch genders. So it can appear as male or female. And I did read in some articles that they believe the true form really is a frail little girl, which again, very interesting. And that could almost make sense of kind of trying to demonstrate itself to be, much nastier. I almost think of like the Wizard of Oz, with the big giant head, and then it's just this guy. So who knows? It is interesting. That's why I find this one really interesting. So another piece on this is supposedly this entity appeared to Ham, which was one of Noah's sons, after the flood, and gave him or helped him develop a book of mathematics. So kind of helped share mathematical knowledge. But why this particular entity would get conjured or get used a lot is this entity can give love, can make one person love another person. So that is what this entity is most known for. But what is interesting, there's another story where allegedly Peter the Great which, there's all kinds of stories in Russia that, some people feel he was the Antichrist. Some, there are stories that he, allegedly sold his soul. Well, one of the stories is that he actually, when Russia was fighting the Swedes, conjured this entity for help driving the Swedes away. And this entity agreed on 3 conditions. He had to give this entity his sons, his heart, and his soul. And again, that is that. Yeah, Christina. And I don't know if you've been on the shows when I've said this, Christine, but a little girl appears to me a lot. I get the voice of a little girl all the time, and I have had different sensitives that don't know each other, and have shared this prior to me ever sharing it on the show. So I don't think they picked it up from this. Contact me to say, be very, very careful. That little girl is not a little girl. It's demonic. And so I'm always on guard, and I'll just share real quick. We had, in addition to the kids I have, we had some, we have some angel babies, that sadly didn't make it to us. And so in the back of my head, I was always like, well, is this one of my lost kids? And so I've always kind of put guards up on that. That would be an easy way to try to kind of get under the shields, get under the wall, is just appear and say, hey, I'm your long lost kid. And it could be something like this. So, but yeah, very interesting, Christine. So I'm always on guard when those little kids show up. Stuff, yeah. All right. Well, anyway, the other funny thing about this is, supposedly Peter the Great went ahead with this deal. The Swedes did get kicked out, so allegedly, he did sell his soul to this entity. So supposedly, then this entity showed up to Mephistopheles, which is another entity, not on this. I don't even know if that one's in this. I know it's not one of the 9. I have to go back to see where that one shows up. Again, you get these weird mixture names and stuff. And essentially trolled. This is in this account where essentially trolled that demon, saying, haha, Peter the Great conjured me to help and didn't conjure you, even though I guess territory-wise it was supposed to be that demon's territory and place to be conjured. So just an interesting side story. So, well, it's funny you say the big eyes. Now you're triggering, because I didn't share. They said the actual description on this one was a doe-eyed, frail little girl. That is the description I found for that one as a potential true form, if you really get it down. Now, I want to be really clear from the folks in the chat. Do I think that entity is appearing to me? No. I think if these entities are out there messing around with people, they're messing around with people that have way more power and authority and can mess up the world far more than somebody like little old me. If anything, if something's messing around with me, it could be, somebody that reports to, one of these legions down, one of these legions, 4 or 5 steps down that hierarchy would probably be the, or even maybe even lower would be the level that my kind of power, influence, and authority would attract. But I am on guard. All right. Sorry about that. We got the next 2. They're biggies. I have a lot more on one than the other, though. So, but these are both, and these should be known. All right. This one, from the accounts I've been able to read, is pretty nasty. I'm not going to say this name. So these next 2 are allegedly fallen cherubim. So, and if you know anything, I'm not an expert on the hierarchy of angels, but cherubim are pretty high up. I believe if you read Revelation, the 4 that are around kind of the throne of God that are singing and falling down are all cherubim. So it would make sense that these last 2 that at least have the largest kind of armies to them would be from this rank. So this one, only 80, and I forgot to add, as we'll say the name again. The one that was in Tobit and attacked the brides and did the thing with Solomon. 72 legions, but it's weird that has where all the other ones just basically say demons. That one's described as 72 lesser demons. So I don't know if that means that one could potentially be lower than the other ones, but I'll throw that out there. This one is interesting because it has two descriptions. It has 80 legions of demons and 50 legions of spirits. Only one, at least on these ranks. I don't know if there's more lower. I haven't really dove into the lower rankings of things, which I forgot. I think I thought I was going to kind of read those off for y'all. It kind of goes, if I understand this right, king, duke, prince, marquis, earl, knight, president. So there's a lot of different layers. Anyway, this one seems pretty nasty. One of the descriptions is the Lord of Arrogance, gives power. So that is the benefit of, and gives the ability to give political positions. So if you just think somebody kind of moving behind the scenes, kind of helping put bad people in bad spots, whether it's, they're incompetent or whether they're, incredibly autocratic or all of the above. This is kind of folks that maybe sell out for power and influence politically. This is the bucket or area they're dealing with. So gives power, known as being independent, knows no master. That's kind of the mentality, which actually, to be honest, kind of, I don't know the right word. Triggered wouldn't be the right word. But it kind of pricked my conscience a little bit on here because that's something I kind of always say is I'm like a no team, no tribe. I'm my own. I follow no one kind of thing. And so when I started reading this, I was like, oh, crap. Because, I don't want to necessarily be in this camp. This one doesn't sound like a good person at all. Describes, I believe, a self-description of I am hell's brightest fire. Revels in pain, revels in the pain of others. The king of, I don't know if I said it earlier, the king of evil, and gives power. So, Steph, you nailed it. Ego, power. This is like, I see this as like, narcissism. Somebody mentioned earlier about narcissists. I see this as like narcissistic energy embodied in a demon. And or if you wanted to just take all those characteristics and make a not saying necessarily that these are fictional, don't get me wrong, but if you wanted to make a fictional entity to embody it, that's what this would be. And when you read the description, I didn't find like a really good description on this. It tended to be almost what you would expect, kind of good looking, kind of angelic. There was even one I read that was kind of like, likes to appear like a regular human being, kind of like, with a spiffy business suit and, just it's that kind of, I almost think of, I forget the guy's name. I didn't watch the movie, but and this is really going to date me, but kind of like the guy on like Wall Street, just this, business person that crushes everybody under their feet. That's kind of the vibe I get with this one. Yeah, Pepper. And I do believe that, again, it could be, but I do believe that can certainly happen. The mechanism of it, not sure, but I do believe that possession type stuff is a real thing. Okay, gets to our last one, the one that actually got me investigating this in the first place. Yeah, I could not find a picture of this. I do have a picture of this last one, which is different than what was shown. It's a small picture, though. So I'm just going to go to the full screen here. So hopefully you guys can see this. Still not very big. It's actually just a dude riding a camel. So it's not all that. Oh, I just messed up my screen here for a second. So pardon me as I juggle some stuff here. Okay. So, now this one I can talk a little bit more about. This, was the antagonist in Hereditary. I had not heard of him before that. This is one whose name I have had come through on investigations, which I find very interesting. again, not something that when people start saying about, when you do these devices, you're picking up radio stations, you're picking up, what are the odds of getting like that name? Kind of a weird, just again, weird. So 200 legions. So double the, 7th and 8th one. So much more than the other ones. Another fallen cherubim, is described as, or I don't know if this is a self-description or not, the most loyal to Lucifer. So does that mean, some say that means he is the cruelest, however you want to describe that, but that is the description attached to him. He appears as what is described as a relatively effeminate man riding a camel, and he is preceded by a very large parade of musicians. So again, if you're noticing, a lot of these have these little like entourages of musicians that precede them. But it seems from the descriptions, his entourage is the largest, described as very attractive. And one of the things that he does, and you can see again, much like the cat one, doesn't say love, but has the ability to bind people together. So binds people to others. So I almost view and you can think of different situations where this could be the case, where people get tied together in life, but there isn't that emotion of love. Whereas the previous one we talked about, it actually seems like there is true love. It's just not organic in nature. It's forced. Whereas in this case, it's more, it's described as bind or bound. So I view it as almost like a forced situation, where the people are stuck together, whether that is, if you think, years and years back where, economic reasons or arranged marriages or forced thing, I think sometimes we lose sight of how much true freedom we have now. Even though, it's not perfect compared to past generations to not be tied to certain individuals. So that's part of that. Also test with questions. There's a description that much like a banshee can give a incredibly painful scream. And so again, conjured. And if it's, I don't know if you don't get the question right, or if you're annoying him or whatever, you can unleash this horrible scream. Very powerful. Steph already put on their knowledge, ability to share knowledge. Again, the divination piece, very knowledgeable. This is interesting, Christine. I'll be curious on this one because I'm going to get to a story then, and we'll see. Reanimates the dead. I know this is going to counter what Christine just said, and I'm just sharing what I found in the articles I read. I don't have firsthand experience. There was descriptions saying very hostile to humanity. Now, there is also a case where he often appears with two other, I think they are described as presidents in the hierarchy. And I'm going to butcher their names, so I'm just not even going to say it. I don't have them written up there. So it's interesting. Yeah, Steph's emotions, water. Yeah. So there is again, take this for what it's worth. I was reading some accounts of people that claim to have interacted and conjured this entity. I certainly didn't click on any videos or anything that detailed how to do it, or any of these, channel the meditations. To each their own on that. That's not it's funny. I have some friends that think I'm actually crazy for just doing what I'm doing, but I do have lines and boundaries, and that's one of them. And that's mainly because, as I shared with you before, when I do these investigations, there's a lot of hatred out there directed towards me. So I figure there is something out there, or a category of things out there that don't like me. So I'm not going to play around with some of that, just in case. But anyway, so these descriptions came across as, again, on the attractive piece, some of the words I would describe. And this actually kind of seems to sync with what Christine is saying, although I'm not insinuating this to what Christine is mentioning. these described him as almost seductive, and that that was easy to work with, extremely attractive. Some of the descriptions where they felt they got kind of sucked in, and then when they no longer wanted to deal, kind of couldn't get away, which again kind of parallels other stories in this space. So it's very interesting. So regardless, definitely seems to rank high in this hierarchy. Interesting that I also find it interesting that I'd have to go through and look at this all, but it's almost like the higher we went up, at least these last couple ones at the top, they seem to appear less creepy. It's I don't know. It's almost like I don't know how I'm trying to put this together in my head, so bear with me on this. It's almost like if you had an adult design, make yourself look scary, versus you have like a second grader make yourself look scary, and the second grader would kind of like go all over the top on things, versus the adult might be much more subtle in how they do it. That's kind of almost how I see this, that, even though these are all at the higher levels, the lower level ones seem to have almost like this over the top, the combination of like 5 different animals and breathing fire. And then you get these other ones near the top that, just look like people and have a parade of musicians in front of them. So Steph says, with everything he's associated with, I think of him all about all the tarot. That's interesting. So I see him as, not that I kind of don't want to make this bridge in my head that, tarot is tied directly with these folks, but I definitely see for me, I see a water energy with this one. I feel that I could be wrong, but I feel actually, even if you want to get into the astrology type thing, I would describe the description on this seems to me, and it's so funny. It's all the water signs that I tend to like annoy when I do this, but I see this almost as like a Scorpio energy, the way he's described. So yeah, so it's so it's interesting. So that's what I have. But I said that's an interesting thing, Steph. That all the aspects, and that's why he's attracted. I think some of it too is the power piece. I think the more power you have at the disposal, the more energy you can kind of portray. And so, in some respects, depending on how you want to look at this, this entity could possibly be like the number 2 in kind of that whole realm. So that could be a lot of kind of power at their disposal. Yeah, Christine, I'm intrigued by this now. So I'll set up the. I have a really late, or I shouldn't say not really late. I have my international business where I have a really early meeting tomorrow, so I can't be on real long. So I will set this. I will do the same thing. If you guys can follow to make this nice and neat for other people that watch, because I have heard from some folks that they don't want to hang on for 2-3 hours. So that's why I'm trying to shorten this. Ended up being a pretty long show. I won't tack on the chat on the end of this, so I'm going to come right back up on kind of what we do before. So I don't have it set up yet. I will set it up. So just look on the Paranormal channel, or however you normally see my updates. I will get this set up, and then we will do a quick after show to do Q&A on this, and we will go forward. I'm going to do a follow-up. We're going to do the Solomon story. I don't know exactly when. Also, I'm going to do my experiment that I've been talking about. It's just been too cold and too icy that I haven't felt like sitting out in a parking lot to do these experiments. So, but we have some warm weather coming. It's actually going to be spring-like, I think, by the latter part of next week. So I might be able to do it soon. Yeah, Steph, that makes sense. That the well-rounded piece on it. So anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed this, and I will see you all next Sunday. Or I'll see you, for those who want to join me after show, look for the link. I'll set it up in about 5 minutes, and I'll see the rest of you all next Sunday. Take care, everybody. Thanks.